Hello folks, welcome to the Age of Asparagus and part 2 of making a 3D top-down shooter in Godot. By the end of this episode, our character will have a basic weapon system that can equip a gun and fire bullets. Okay, let's roll! I just opened up Godot again. I'm going to open my level scene. One thing we didn't do last time is add WASD movement controls, so let's do that now. So we're going to go up into the project settings, and on the input mat tab we're going to scroll down, and here where we see UI left, since that's the action we're using, hit this little plus icon. We'll click the key, and for left I want A. Click A on the keyboard and hit OK, and we'll do the same thing for right. Hit the plus key, D. For up we'll use W, and for down S. Okay, let's run that again. Oh yeah, that's nicer. WASD, good. So before we can shoot some bullets, we'll probably want to make a gun. So I'll go up to the scene menu and hit new scene, 3D scene. So we'll have a spatial node, that will be the root, and under the spatial we'll add some meshes. So hit the plus here, let's add a mesh instance, and we're just going to add a couple cubes. As we do a little bit of modeling and tweaking and moving around in the 3D viewport, it's nice to get used to these shortcut keys, which are W, E, and R. So W will move into translation mode, so you can translate your objects. Control Z to undo those translations. And E, the next one over, matches this rotation mode, and then R will go into scale mode. So I'm going to be hitting these keys. So I'm going to hit R, and we're going to scale this in and down a little bit. We're just kind of visualizing it here. It is snapping a little bit because I have this snap button on. I also have, I can see this use local space is on. I'm not sure that's not gonna affect us until we rotate anything, but just in case, make a note of that. Okay, we'll go down something like that. And before we duplicate it, actually, let's give it a material. So over here in the inspector material, click new spatial material. We'll select that sphere-y thing, and in the albedo, let's pick some sort of like gray gunmetal-y type thing, sure. Control D to duplicate it, and in the next mesh instance here, now I'm going to hit E to go to rotate, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit. I'm going to hit R to go back into scale. I'm going to scale it down this way. And if you've used Blender before, Godot uses the same 3D view, so I can hit 1 on the number pad to look in front view, 3 for side view, and 7 for top view. So I'm hitting 1 on the number pad, and it's going to send us into orthographic view, and as I come out here, it'll go back into perspective. So, and I can use, just like Blender, the numpad 5 to go toggle between them. So I'm hitting 1 here, and I'm going to hit W to grab it. And we'll move it down here. Now when we're grabbing, I do not want it snapping because those snaps are too big. So we'll put this up somewhere like here for a handle, and then I'm going to Control D, duplicate it again. And the duplicate I'm going to move over here, and this can kind of be our magazine. So I'll hit E to go into rotation mode, something like that. W to go back into grab mode. Sure. Okay, let's, I'm going to double click the spatial. We'll call it gun. And we have a gun. Let's Control S that. I'm going to save the scene as gun.tscn, and like the horribly organized person I am at the moment, I'm just going to save it here in the root of our project. We'll organize that up later when things start to get a little bigger. Let's go back to our level scene, and under the player, I'm going to create a new node that's going to act as our weapon controller. So let's hit plus. I just want this base node. Good, because it's not going to have a position or rotation. It's only going to use to hold a script. So let's double click that, and we'll call it gun controller. So the gun controller is going to control which weapons are equipped, and it can fire the gun for us, can do other stuff like that. The benefit of having it as its own node is we can then save it as its own scene, and we can plop a gun controller onto bad guys or anything else we want to have, a gun, a turret, whatever, right? So we're going to keep it separate from the player script, and it also groups the code for us nicely so our player script doesn't get so massive. So I'm going to add a new script here. Sure, right in the root. So what are some variables we might have here? Well, we might want a starting weapon. Let's create a new exported variable called starting weapon. But we have a problem because we need to tell what type of variable starting weapon is. So this is going to be a packed scene, So we can drop a scene in there, and we can just check. Let's just check right away to make sure that works. So there's our starting weapon. It's empty, and I can go down to my gun.tscn gun scene and drop it in. Cool. So we have a starting weapon. We're also going to want to know where we have to position the gun in the scene when we equip it. So let's create a variable called, I don't know, hand? Sure, hand, because he's going to hold the gun. And we'll create another variable called equipped weapon. So the equipped weapon will hold which weapon we are currently using. So to start, when this gun controller loads in the ready function, we're going to check if there is a starting weapon. So if we provided a starting weapon, then we want to equip it. So we'll use a function that doesn't exist yet. Let's call it equip weapon, and we'll pass it the starting weapon. So let's create that function now. Func equip weapon. And it's going to take a variable, which will be the weapon to equip. So when we equip a weapon, let's first check if there already is a weapon equipped, and if there is, we'll delete it. So if equipped weapon, and GD script, similar to Python, which is kind of nice, is it's just going to check if equipped weapon is a truthy value. So if it doesn't exist, if it's null, it's going to consider that false. And if there's something there, then it will consider it true. So I like to do a lot of print statements, sorry about that, but let's just give ourselves some feedback. It's kind of a sanity check, and we can delete all these later, but if that happens, we'll give us some feedback that we're deleting the current weapon. Now let's actually delete that weapon. And you remember how to delete nodes there in the scene tree. We're going to use q free. Notice how q free doesn't pop up here as an autocomplete, and that's because the editor here doesn't know what equip weapon is. It doesn't know that it's a node that has a method called q free. So when we create the variable equipped weapon, we can give it what's called a type hint, and that lets the editor know what we're expecting the equipped weapon to be, right? So for now, although we know it's going to be a gun, we can just say it's going to be some kind of node, right? So let's just leave it for that for now, because nodes should have a q-free method. All right. Later on, we can make this more specific to what kind of node the equipped weapon is. Actually, what is it? It's a spatial, right? We already know. So why don't we just go ahead and let's say it's some sort of spatial for now. So that should delete the weapon. Else, so if we don't have a weapon equipped, then, well, first I'm just going to print something here. No weapon equipped. And now we want to equip it. So let's go equipped weapon equals the weapon to equip, and that's the weapon that we passed to this method. So when the gun controller scene loads, when we load our level, which loads our player, gun controller, when we start, if a starting weapon was provided over here, which we did, then it'll find that starting weapon and it will equip it for us. So why don't we just run this now, just to make sure our logic is working, because although we don't actually add the gun yet to the scene or to the player, it should say no weapon equipped. So let's just run our level. Okay, so we have an error here trying to assign a value of type pack scene to a variable of type spatial. And that is occurring here. I can see in my stack frames, in the trace of where the error comes from, it's coming from this line. So equipped weapon, you can see we say equipped weapon and we want it to be a spatial variable. And we're trying to give it this weapon to equip. Well, the weapon to equip is the starting weapon, and the starting weapon is a packed scene. So scenes and nodes are not the same thing. Although we turn scenes into nodes when we instance them, before they're instanced, they're not the same type. So what we need to do is weapon to equip. We need to actually instance the weapon and turn it into a node. So our packed scene is kind of like a template, or in other programming it might be like a class that defines what the starting weapon would be, but you still have to actually create the starting weapon. So we're going to do that here. So we'll instance it. Now this equipped weapon is going to be a node, and now we want to add the node to the tree. So the normal way to add a node would be to add child, And if I just type add child, it's going to add it as a child to whatever node we're in right now. And the node we're in is the gun controller. Forget that because we don't want it there. Anyway, where do we want it? We want it to appear on the hand, but our player doesn't have a hand yet. So let's make a hand. Control S, let's save this gun controller script so far. Let's go back to our player, and somewhere in his body, let's add a hand. And with the body selected, I'm going to hit Control A, and I'm going to add a position 3D. Position 3D is just a spatial node. The only difference is it appears as a cross in the viewport at all times. So even if I have selected around somewhere, my position 3D will still appear, which you can't see it because it's behind this guy. But if I move it out here, you see that little cross hair right there? So when I select something else, the little crosshair just remains. So that's the only difference between the position 3D. But I actually want that there in the editor. So I'm moving it to where our hand would be. I'm going to hit 7 to go to top view and move it out 1. And I'm going to turn off snap just so I can position the hand right where I want it, maybe about there. And I'm going to hit 1 to go, 3 to go to side view, and that looks good. Yeah, okay, so that's the hand. Let's double click the position 3D and I'll call it the hand. Control S, save that. Let's go back into our gun controller script, and we need to tell the hand variable, what it is. So in the ready function, we're going to tell the hand variable that it is this node right here. Okay, how do we do that? Well, let's get parent. Assuming that the gun controller is always going to be a child of the thing that's moving around and shooting, this should be fine. So even if we give it to an enemy or anything, the gun controller will be there. And then in the parent, we're going to, wherever that hand is in the tree, we're going to use find node, that's find underscore node, and we're going to find the node called hand. So now we've set the hand, we can go back down to our equip weapon, and using the hand node, we can add a child to it. And that will be our equip weapon. Control S, save that. Let's run the scene again. Hey, we have it! It's a little far out. It's hard to see. It looks like it's rotated sideways. Okay, let's go check out the hand. Well, let's check out the gun first. So I'm going to double click on the gun.tscn and we'll go to the 3D view. That looks okay. Oh, actually, you know what? That's the positive red, remember, is the positive X direction. So generally forward, we want forward to be the positive Z direction. So I'm going to rotate the gun. So I'm going to hit E here, and I'm going to rotate the gun 90 degrees. Make sure snap is on, and we'll just rotate it, boom, 90 degrees. Or you can go to the transform and just make sure it's rotated about the Y-axis for 90 degrees. Okay, Control S, save that, and close the gun. And is that all we needed to do? No. Okay, right on. He's using the gun as a snorkel. Okay, let's go check out what the hand is doing. Hand, how are you doing? Let's go W back into movement. Okay, the hand's like upside down or something. Okay, let's go to the transform. It's not rotated, but let's make the hand get back to normal. Actually, we're going to go to the universal transform because I want to see those arrows. And I want that blue arrow pointing forward. And I probably want the red arrow pointing down. So the Y, because green is our yellow, so that's up. Okay, that looks like how we want the hand, right? Like positive Z is forward, generally, is what we're going for. How about now? Yay! Okay, it worked. But it's a little far back. Even though our hand is... I can't do that. Our hand seems to be in the right position. It's right there, in front of the character. If we go back to our gun scene, you'll notice that the origin of the gun scene is in the middle of the gun. So that's the part that is going to match up to the hand. So if I click the gun, let's move the whole thing forward. There? Why don't we set a main scene so I can just hit the play button? So let's confirm a main scene. We'll select our level. And now, hey, that's pretty good. It's still back a little far. I kind of want it to look like it's floating ahead, so I'm going to turn off snap and just move it a little bit forward. And that's kind of probably what I want. Oh yeah, we want to hit the play button now. Good. Okay, pew pew pew. Now to make some pew pews. Just a quick note, if we go back to the gun controller script, when I did add child, notice how it didn't autocomplete for me? So I'm going to give another hint here and let it know that it is a position 3D. And that's going to help us to autocomplete stuff later on, right? So now if I do it, I can go, it knows it's a node, and all nodes will have this add child. That didn't work. Add child. Up, enter, good. And we'll give it this one right here. Okay, let's do projectiles. We're going to add another new scene from the scene menu. New scene. Let's go to the 3D view and create a little bullet. So Control A. Let's make this, let's just do another spatial node. So we can click spatial, or you can click 3D scene over there, which is actually a spatial. We'll call this bullet. All it's going to be is we're going to give it a mesh. We'll give it a mesh instance, which will be a, you can give it whatever you want. I'm just going to do a little cube. That's pretty big, but let's make it look nicer. So we'll make it a new spatial material. Click on the sphere. In albedo, we're going to choose pretty dark color, not quite black. I'll just mostly black. Okay, that's probably huge. We could scale it in our script, but let's go, I think it's going to be something like 0.1. So I'm just going to type 0.1 down here in the transform in the inspector on all the values, and that's all we need. I'm going to hit Control S and save this as a bullet.tscn. We have a bullet. Now let's fire it. And let's create that bullet. So let's open our gun scene, and we're going to give our gun a script. We can just call it gun. We're going to provide it a bullet. So we'll do the same thing in our gun controller, and we'll let we'll export a packed scene, but this time instead of starting weapon, it's going to be the bullet. And if I go to my gun now, I should have this option here to drag a bullet. So I'll take my bullet scene. I didn't want to open the bullet scene. I wanted to click and drag that bullet here. We need some more variables here. And I'm going to export them as well, because it's kind of fun just to quickly change them in the editor itself. Let's export a variable. We need to know how fast the bullet's going, so we'll call it muzzle velocity. Really, this should be muzzle speed, because we're just, this is just a scalar value of how fast things are going. I'm going to use 30 to start. And let's export another variable called millis between shots. And we'll set that to be about 100. So this is going to be how many milliseconds there are between consecutive shots. So like if you're holding down whatever fire button is, it would go 1/10 of a second, or 100 milliseconds. So you'll basically get 10 shots per second at this, but we can go edit these values quickly and change them and just see how that affects our game to find the right values. These will just be the defaults. Okay, so we'll shoot. So let's do this in our process. Could do this in physics process maybe. I don't think we need to, because we're gonna have to use some sort of timer somehow to determine when the next shot is being fired. So the frame rate, I'm not sure will matter here. Basically, in the process, we're gonna try and shoot. We're gonna create our own function, shoot. And so when we shoot, first thing we need to do is we need to create a bullet. So let's go var, we'll call it new bullet. And we're going to take our bullet and we're going to instance it. So this is going to create a new bullet node that we can put into our scene, but it's not there yet. And before we put it there, we want to give it the right location. So how are we going to do that? Well, we don't want to put the bullet, let's go back to the 3D view here for our level. We don't want the bullet to be a child of the gun, because then as we move the character and the gun around, the bullets will actually move with the character. Once they're fired, we just want them to go, right? So we want them to be children of the root node of the entire level. So where am I? What's going on here? Let's go back to our gun script, and we will set our new bullet's global transform. Global. So the global transform includes its scale, rotation, and translation, right? Really, we're only worried about the translation at this point, which is the position, and we're going to set it to the muzzle's global transform. Muzzle dot global transform. Globe doesn't know. Why doesn't it know? That's because muzzle doesn't exist. Our gun doesn't have a muzzle. It doesn't know where it's shooting the bullet out of. Okay, let's Control K that to comment it. I'm going to Control S to save, and let's go back to the 3D and add a muzzle. So, and a muzzle is just going to be a position. So we'll Control A, add a position node, position 3D. There it is. You can barely see it, and I'm going to move it forward, right there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to move it out a tiny bit just so we can see it in our scene even when we're not clicked. There, you see that little crosshair? Okay, and we'll call this the muzzle. Control S, there, save it. Let's go back to, oops, gun, scene, or gun script. I'm going to Control K that back again. And now we have a muzzle. Do we? Yes. Global transform. So we're just going to basically make the bullet's transform match that muzzle's transform, which is pretty straightforward, especially since our bullet's just a cube. It doesn't even have any direction. Now we're going to give the bullet some speed. So new bullet dot speed, and we're going to set that to be the muzzle speed. Does new bullet have speed? What is bullet? I don't think new bullet has a speed variable, right? Because our bullet doesn't have a script yet. Okay, maybe we'll have to come back to adding speed once we give the bullet a script and some variables. So finally, we want to add the bullet as a child to our scene, and we want to, like I said, we want to add it as a child to the level itself, not to the player or anything underneath that can be moving around. So this is a little complicated here, but we're going to get the scene, create a new variable called the scene root, and we're going to get the tree. So that's getting this tree here, the whole tree where the gun exists, and the gun doesn't actually exist in this tree yet, but you know when the game starts we create a gun and it appears under the hand. So we're going to get the tree, and then we're going to, in the tree we're going to get the root of the tree. Going to the root of the tree, all right, and now we're going to get all the children of the tree here, and then this is going to be a list of some sort of iterable, and so we're going to, you get the 0th element, or the first element of the list, because that's going to be our root node. I feel like there should be a nicer, cleaner, easier way to do this, to get the root node, but it works. And now, to our scene root, not equals dot add child. Child? You're not letting me add a child? Probably because I don't think it knows. We're getting the first element of this thing. It has no idea what the scene root, what kind of variable the scene root is. Add child, and we're going to add the new bullet. So, does it work? The gun is going to shoot constantly, so right now it should just create a whole bunch of bullets. Did it oh, yeah, it's creating bullets. They're not moving, but they're being created at the right spot, it looks like. Hey, I just made a drawing program. We can draw with bullets. Okay. Great. I forgot the most important part, especially for debugging purposes. In our gun script, every time we shoot, we need to say pew. Pew. What? Oh, p tiny is print in another language I speak, which I can't tell you what it is right now. Pew 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 pew. I just played the scene, which is why nothing popped up instead of playing the level, but now we have all our pews. Whoa. Okay, I'm not going to waste your time playing around with that. So let's give the bullet some speed and make it go places. So the bullet scene, let's open that. There's the 3D bullet, and it has no script by itself yet, so we'll click the bullet's root node there and add a script. So this is a spatial. We need a variable, obviously, called speed. I'm just going to export it. And speed is going to be an integer. We can give it a default value, actually. Let's give it a 70. We don't need to do anything to get it ready, but we will need the physics process. And we want physics process instead of process here, because this is if your frame rate is different, we don't want the bullets to go faster or slower. We always want them to go the same speed, whether you're having lag or whether you're just running 30, 60, or 120 FPS. So we can move the bullet. We're going to use global translate to translate it in the global coordinate system. What do? It looks like we need to give it a vector 3. That's going to be the distance we're going to move it. So we're going to translate it forward somehow. I wonder if we just go vector 3 dot forward. That's always going to be the same direction, but okay. We can multiply that by the speed, And of course, we don't want it to go the speed every frame. We want it to take into account the frame rate, so we'll go times delta. This is going to happen when it instances. It's just going to move itself when it fires, so we should be able to just run the game. And there we go. Yeah, look, it is definitely always shooting forward. Okay, so we need the proper forward direction. So we'll create a new variable called forward direction. And this is going to be our bullet's forward direction at the time that it instances. So we're going to get the bullet's global transform. From the global transform, we're going to get the basis vector, and we're going to take its z direction, and we want to normalize it. That's a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to explain that now. We can do that later on. This should be in the proper direction if our bullet isn't rotated weirdly. And so instead of going vector 3 forward, let's just go in the actual bullet's forward direction when it's instanced. How about that? Forward DD. Forward. Hey, there we go. It's definitely turning. However, its forward direction appears to be not in the forward direction I was expecting. Okay, let's go back to the gun and the muzzle. Do you remember we just give the exact same transform to the bullet, and we take that transform right from the muzzle? And the muzzle's forward Z direction is pointing sideways, which is why we're shooting sideways. So I'm going to turn snap on and grab the green, rotate about the y-axis. So our muzzle is pointing the same direction as the gun. Okay, Control S. Does that fix it? Yay, it fixes it. Okay, so we have bullets. This is going to start lagging soon because our bullets never die. They just go on forever and ever. We better stop that before my computer crashes. Let's make sure the bullets die after a certain amount of time. So in our bullet scenes, our bullet script, I think the easiest way is to just do a simple timer and just kill it when the time is up. So if it hits something later on, we'll queue free it and destroy it, but if it doesn't hit anything, it'll go until we just say kill it. So I'm going to create a constant here called kill time, and we're going to kill it after 2 seconds. So it might go off the screen a little bit, but it won't go on forever. And we're going to create a new variable called timer, and it's going to start at 0. And this is pretty easy. What we'll do is each frame we'll add the delta, which after 1 second, regardless of your frame rate, should add up to 1, I think. And we'll just say if timer is greater than the kill time, let's kill it. So we'll queue free. Thank you. Queue free. Is that gonna work? You know what? I think it's gonna work, but because it's shooting off the frame, it's not totally obvious, is it? Unless I shoot way off. Can I see it disappear? No. So what if we just set the kill time to 0.2 seconds? Is that more obvious? There we go. Yeah. See, they don't even make it off the screen now after 0.2 seconds. And it's still shooting 1 per frame. So let's 2 seconds. That should be good. Obviously, we need to add some sort of rate of fire to our gun so that it doesn't just keep shooting at its maximum once per frame. So we'll go back to the gun script. We already set a variable milliseconds between shots, so we just got to use this. I'm going to use a timer. So in the gun, with the gun selected, let's add a new node, a child node. We'll just add a timer, and we want it to be a one-shot timer, so it doesn't reset itself. It only will start when we in our code say start the timer. So over in the inspector for the timer selected, I'm going to turn it on 1 shot. Let's go to the gun script. Let's get a reference to our timer at the top here. So we'll create an onReady var, which will be I'm going to call it an ROF timer. ROF underscore timer. And actually, yeah, that's probably good. And we'll just go like this. So our rate of fire timer will be this timer node. And when the timer runs out, we're going to call a function to tell us, hey, we can shoot again because the timer ran out. So actually, we should probably get one more variable here, which is can we shoot? And we'll start it out as true. True. And then after we shoot, we will set can shoot to false, and it won't be able to shoot again. It won't actually do it again until it's true. Well, actually now it'll keep going. Instead, what we need to do is say if we can shoot then shoot. And I'm going to highlight all this code and hit tab there to indent it. What happens? Let's run it. Pew, I see the pew. See, it worked because it was too fast to see, but pew pew. We got one bullet shot, and then it set the can shoot to false, and then it didn't matter, even though the process was trying to shoot every frame, it didn't, because we have to set it to true. Also, we're not using the muzzle speed, are we? So let's do that so we can slow the bullet down and actually see that one shoot. So the new bullet dot speed we're going to set to be the muzzle speed. Did we give our bullet here? Let's Control S, save that. The bullet script, did we give it a speed? We did. Okay, so we have a speed and it's 70. So we could set the bullet speed in the inspector of our bullet scene. There's the speed there. Or we can, our bullet itself in our bullet script, sorry, our gun script, we can set the bullet speed. So the speed could be based on what weapon's loaded, for example, in this case. So we'll do that. So here it's saying this gun's muzzle speed is 30. We're setting the new bullet speed to be 30 for the moment. And is that too fast? No, it's not too fast. Did you see that bullet go? I can make it even slower so we can see. So let's go to the gun and we'll set the muzzle speed to be like 3. Pew! Okay, good. It works. Let's go back to the gun script. What were we doing? Oh yeah, the timer. So we have a timer here. It's a one shot. We want to call a function when the time is up. And when the time is up, we're going to set can shoot to true again. So let's do that. So the timer, beside the inspector here, the other tab is the node tab. So we're going to go to the node and we're going to create a timeout signal for the timer. So I can click connect down at the bottom here. I'm going to double click timeout. And I'm going to go with the default method on timer timeout. And I want to connect it to my gun script. Yes, that's what we're in right now. So it created this for us. And when the timer times out, all we have to do is go can shoot equals true. Run that. And why did you not work? Okay, well first off, let's go, just for my sanity. Okay, timer, timer, timer. Oh my gosh, can you believe it? We gotta start the timer. So, when are we gonna start the timer? Let's start the timer after we shoot, right? Of course. Let's start the timer after we shoot. So you shoot, let's go ROF timer, and let's start it. Start. So every time you shoot, the timer will start. You won't be able to shoot again until the timer finishes. It sets can shoot to true, and then you can shoot again. And this should happen every 100 milliseconds, so 1/10 of a second. Pew! 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 Yay! Cool! That's not very rapid fire though, is it? Let's set that to like 10. Wait a second, that's not every 100 milliseconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 that's every 1 second. Okay, silly issue here. We don't actually use millis between shots. The timer has a default, if I go back up to the inspector, a default wait time of 1 second, and we never actually set it. So let's do that in our ready function. We'll go to the ROF timer, and there's probably a wait time. This is just going to be the same name as this property here. And we're going to set it to be the millis between shots. So we want to wait. Let's go back to 100 and see if that works. 100 milliseconds between shots. Oh my gosh, that's not going to work. The wait time is in seconds, and this is in milliseconds. So we want to divide it by 1,000. 100 divided by 1,000 will be 0.1. However, this is an integer, and this is an integer, so it's going to try and divide an integer by an integer, and it's just going to make it 0 or 1 or something. So let's divide it by 1,000.0, just so GDScript actually results in a float value of 0.1, which is what we want here. So there we go. That's every 1/10 of a second, right? So in our gun, we should be able to drop that milliseconds down a little bit. Oh, not that low, not that low. To 47. What's that look like? And actually, the fastest we can shoot is once per frame. And since by default Godot is going to run at 60 frames per second, 1,000 divided by 60 is what? Something like 16.7 maybe. So if we go to 20, it'll still be blasting cool. And you see the little flicker there. I don't know if you'll be able to see that on the video. But as soon as we get below 16, like 15, it's just going to look like, that's it. It's just going to look like a whip because we have maxed out how fast we can go. Even if we did 1, which should shoot 1,000 per second, it will not. It will shoot 60 per second. Okay, let's reset that to 100. Actually, 50 looked way cooler for now. I can move around. But it's always shooting. I should probably have a button to shoot, right? Okay, let's add that. So let's go to our player script. We're going to need a reference to the gun controller. So let's go on ready var gun controller equals gun controller. Actually, I'm going to use lowercase here, gun controller. So we have our gun controller here, and here is this is some movement code, right? And now we're going to do some shoot code. So what do we want to do? We're going to add another isActionPressed here, and this time I'm just going to let's create our own, and I'm going to call it the primary action button. So in our game, during this phase of our game, maybe super advanced later on, there's like more than just click the primary action to shoot. We're going to shoot. When we click the primary action, we're going to tell the gun controller to shoot. Now, I don't think that method exists yet, so we'll have to create it. We'll also have to create the primary action. Let's do that now. So in the project settings input map, we're going to go create a new by up here in the action typing primary action. And remember, these are case sensitive, so if you put a capital here, you need to make sure you type the exact same text there. So we now have a primary action, and I'm going to add the mouse button, the left button for all devices, and I'm also going to add a key for the spacebar to shoot. Okay, now it should recognize the primary action. We just need to get the gun controller to shoot. So let's go to our gun controller script. I'm going to Control S, save this, and create a shoot method. And here, the gun controller is going to make sure we have a weapon equipped. So if we have an equipped weapon, then we're going to use that equipped weapon and call its shoot method. And this shoot method will be the one we created on the gun right here that handles all the timing and stuff. How's that work? Hello? Yeah, so we got a problem because our gun is still saying, hey, I'm going to shoot every frame. So let's just put a pass there. So that function does nothing. And now, pew, pew, pew. Spacebar. All right. Okay, let's reduce the speed there. I think I actually changed it in the gun scene, right? Over here. Yeah, so let's change it back to 100 and run it. Yeah, and I'm limited to 100, no matter how fast I click. All right. Pew, 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 pew. And I guess now we just need some things to kill.